Welcome to the Depth Dive. We're here to explore the complex, sometimes baffling, and occasionally genuinely scary parts of our world. And today, we're definitely diving into something intense. Flash floods. These things can just erupt, turning everyday places into disaster zones in, well, minutes. It makes them incredibly difficult to predict. This kind of in-depth look is exactly what we aim for at Mine Expansion Daily, helping you stay informed. It's September 2, 2025, and our mission today is really to unpack the causes behind these sudden, powerful floods. We're talking intense rain, tricky landscapes, how our cities play a role, and why science still, struggles to forecast them accurately. We want to give you a clearer picture of this ongoing natural challenge. We'll be looking at recent events, scientific findings, even what people are saying online. When I think about floods, usually it's like rivers slowly rising, you get some warning. But flash floods, they're just different, aren't they? What really sets them apart, it feels like a totally separate category of event. So sudden.
Oh, absolutely. They're a completely different beast. The key thing, the defining characteristic, is just how fast they happen. Unlike river floods that might build over days, a flash flood can develop in less than an hour. A 2024 National Weather Service report really emphasized this speed. And that speed, well, that's what makes them so deadly.
Yeah.
Think about this. In 2023, NOAA data showed that 80% of flood deaths in the U.S., that's 120 out of 150 people, were from flash floods.
80%. Wow,
Often
that's a shocking number. So if speed is the main danger, what's the usual trigger? Is it just any old downpour or something more specific?
It's usually very specific. We're talking about brief but incredibly intense rainfall, often from thunderstorms that are very localized. Studies like one in the Journal of Hydrology show that something like 70% of these events come from storms dumping maybe 2 to 4 inches of rain in just half an hour. The ground just gets overwhelmed. It can't soak it up fast enough. And actually, 90% are linked to what meteorologists call cloudburst storms dropping over 2 inches an hour. This intensity is key, especially, in drier areas where hard, baked ground might actually repel water initially. That can increase runoff by maybe 40%. We saw a terrible example in Kentucky in 2024. 4 inches in 45 minutes. It flooded 500 homes. Just like that.
Right, and that intense localized nature must be where the prediction problem really bites, doesn't it? Our weather models are pretty good for big systems, but how do they handle these sudden small-scale downpours?
That's a critical question, and yeah, it highlights a real limitation.
Hmm.
Our big global models, like the GFS, the ECMWF, they're good, about 85% accurate for large-scale weather. But connect that to flash floods. They miss a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Around 60% of these very local events just aren't captured well. A study in weather and forecasting in 2024 pointed this out. You really feel the frustration bubble up online sometimes. I saw an X post, got like 12,000 likes just saying, radar didn't catch the storm that flooded my street. It's a common feeling. The NWS themselves report that about half of flash flood warnings are issued too late. That's a huge gap when minutes count. Even Doppler radar, which is good tech, only accurately spots maybe 70% of these really intense small storms. So there are blind spots.
That lack of warning is terrifying for communities. It really leaves people exposed. And it makes me think it's not just about the amount of rain, but where it lands is crucial too, right? How does the actual shape of the land, the topography play into all this?
Oh, topography's huge, a really critical factor, maybe sometimes overlooked. Think about steep slopes, for instance. You find them in about 40% of the U.S., places like the Appalachians, the Rockies. Those slopes naturally make water run off faster, accelerates it, and that alone increases the flood risk by about 30%, according to a geophysical research letter study from 2023. The water just gains speed, gains force.
So it's like a natural chute, basically, just sending water downhill faster, giving it less time to soak in and more power.
Exactly. And then you add things like canyons or narrow valleys. They act like funnels. They channel all that fast-moving water into tight spaces, which just amplifies the impact dramatically. We saw that vividly in Zion National Park back in 2023. Just 3 inches of rain, but it caused a 10-foot surge in the canyon. In minutes, the NWS reported on it. And this kind of complex terrain also messes with radar signals. It can block or distort them. The Bulletin of the American Meteorological Society found that about 25% of mountainous areas actually get delayed warnings because of this radar interference. There was this X post, I remember, it went viral, a hiker describing this terrifying escape, something like, Caney flooded in 10 minutes, nature's terrifying. Captures that speed.
It really sounds like our models aren't quite capturing those fine details, those microterrain features, and that could be critical for people living there.
Unfortunately, yeah, you're right about that. About 30% of the flood models we currently use, they still don't adequately factor in these crucial small-scale terrain variations. That's according to hydrology and Earth system sciences. And it's not just the static landscape. Climate change is making it worse, too. We're seeing about 15% more intense rainfall events since the year 2000. That's what Nature Climate Change reported. So the problem of overwhelming the landscape, it's growing. I saw a whole X thread in 2024 where people were just saying, the rain hit so fast, no warning could have saved us. That sense of being caught completely off guard.
Okay, so we have the rain, the natural landscape,
Uh,
but then there's us, our footprint. How does the way we build our cities, our urban development, change the equation for flash floods? Does it make things worse?
Oh, significantly worse in many cases. Urbanization really amplifies the risk. When we build cities, we replace natural ground with impervious surfaces. Think pavement, roads, buildings, rooftops. These now cover something like 60% of U.S. cities. And they do exactly what the name says. They prevent water from soaking into the ground. This increases the surface runoff by a staggering 50%. That's from a 2024 Environmental Research Letters study.
50% more runoff. So the water just has nowhere to go. It pools, it flows over land, it causes damage because we've sealed the ground.
Precisely. Take the Houston flood in 2023. It was triggered by, relatively speaking, not a huge amount of rain, just 3 inches. But it caused $1 billion in damage. And the Texas Tribune largely attributed that to unchecked urban sprawl, all that pavement.
Yeah.
Compare that to green spaces, parks, permeable areas. They can absorb 30% more water. Yet urban studies noted that only about 20% of city plans really prioritize integrating that kind of green infrastructure.
Right.
So it's like a missed opportunity for resilience.
And what about the drains and pipes we do build, our stormwater systems? Are they keeping up with this increased runoff and more intense rain?
Well, many of them just aren't. They're outdated. The American Society of Civil Engineers, the ASCE, found that 40% of U.S. cities have stormwater systems that fail under heavy rain conditions. They just get overwhelmed. There was another ex-post, this one got maybe 18,000 likes, that really hit the nail on the head. It said something like, city drains couldn't handle the flood, fix this. Just pure frustration. Now, there are solutions. Retrofitting with things like permeable pavements, surfaces water can seep through, could cut urban flooding by 25%. The EPA put out data on that in 2024. But the funding for these kinds of big infrastructure upgrades, it often lags behind the need.
So putting it all together, the speed, the terrain, our own impact, where are we now with predicting these things? What are the real limits of our current tech against these fast local floods?
Well, our main tools are still radar and satellites. And they're good, 80% accurate for big storms that cover large areas. But their accuracy really drops for these localized flash floods, down to about 50%. It's a significant difference. We're bringing in newer tools, like machine learning models. They're used in about 30% of NWS forecasts now, and they do help improving prediction by maybe 15%. But even these advanced models struggle. They need huge amounts of real-time data about tiny storm cells, and getting and processing that fast enough is still a big challenge. A 2024 study in the Journal of Atmospheric Sciences discussed this.
And I guess these technology gaps don't affect everyone equally, do they? Are some areas just left more vulnerable because the tech isn't there or isn't as effective? What does that mean for those communities?
That's a really important point. And yes, there's definitely an equity issue here. Rural areas, for example, they often have maybe 20% fewer weather stations, less monitoring infrastructure overall. And NOAA data suggests this translates to about 30% less accurate warnings for them. So these communities are inherently facing a higher risk simply because the monitoring isn't as dense. We see tragic outcomes. That Colorado flash flood in 2023 that killed 3 people, it was completely missed by the models. The Denver Post reported it was due to a really rare convergence of storm factors that the system just didn't pick up in that area. And again, you see it reflected online. An ex-post that got shared widely just said, "Tech failed us. Flood came out of nowhere." It captures that feeling of vulnerability when the systems don't reach you effectively.
So the tech has limits, and those limits hit some places harder. Is there a clear way forward, though? What could actually improve forecasting?
There is a path, technologically speaking, investing in things like high-resolution radar networks. That could potentially cut the number of missed events by 20%. That's according to the NWS. But it's expensive. We're talking about maybe $1 billion for a significant upgrade.
Yeah.
So budget constraints are always a hurdle. It becomes a question of priorities and investment.
And even if we had perfect tech, perfect planning, it sounds like there's still this element of just luck, chance. How big a role does that play?
It's fascinating, but luck absolutely plays a part. It's unsettling, but true. There was a case in Arizona in 2023. A severe storm looked set to hit one town, but it shifted slightly at the last minute. That town was spared. But a neighboring area just a few miles away got hammered, lost 50 homes. AZ Central reported on it. Just a slight shift in the storm track made all the difference. The Journal of Hydrology estimates this kind of randomness affects maybe 25% of flash flood outcomes. It adds this layer of anxiety. Better forecasting could maybe reduce our reliance on luck by, say, 15%, but it won't get rid of it completely. Saw another X post reflecting this. My town dodged a flood by pure chance. That feeling that you just got lucky.
Okay, so if prediction will always have gaps and luck is involved, then how we respond when a flood hits becomes absolutely critical. What are the main challenges for emergency systems trying to deal with something so fast, and what actually works to make communities more resilient?
The speed is the killer app for emergency systems, too. It just strains everything. FEMA data from 2024 showed that a worrying 60% of U.S. communities didn't have real-time, practiced flood response plans specifically for these rapid events. And even when evacuation warnings do go out, which remember only happens for about 40% of flash floods, they often arrive late, maybe 10 to 15 minutes before the worst hits, which is barely enough time in many cases.
But are there places getting it right? Strategies that actually make a difference on the ground?
Oh, definitely. There are success stories. Things like focused community training, investing in physical infrastructure like flood barriers. Those are used in about 20% of at-risk towns now. The ASCE estimates these kinds of measures can cut damages by 30%. There was a good example in Tennessee in 2024. One town had just put in a new, faster alert system. They got warnings out effectively and largely escaped major damage from a flood. A nearby town, without that system, lost 10 homes in the same event. An ex-post summed it up well, got 15,000 likes. Better warnings saved lives, but not everywhere. It highlights that difference effective preparation makes. And if you look at the bigger picture, FEMA estimates that better coordinated response plans could save around $500 million nationally each year.
Right. So it really feels like the answer is a mix: smarter city planning, better warning tech that reaches everyone, and communities that are genuinely prepared and know what to do.
Precisely. It's a multifaceted problem that needs a multifaceted solution. Flash floods aren't just a weather issue, they're an economic one, a human one. They cost the U.S. about $10 billion a year. And tragically, 120 lives lost in 2023 alone, according to NOAA. But improvements can make a difference. Better forecasting, like some of the AI models trialed in 2024, might save $2 billion and maybe 30 lives annually. That's a McKinsey estimate. Smarter urban planning, really pushing that green infrastructure. The EPA suggests that could cut damages by 25%. And just raising public awareness is huge. Campaigns in 2024 boosted awareness by 20%, according to FEMA, and that directly reduces how vulnerable people are. There was a really powerful X-post, got 20,000 shares urging, build smarter, predict better, stop flood losses. It really pulls all those threads together.
Wow. This has been a really eye-opening depth dive. It's clear flash floods are incredibly complex, driven by this potent mix of intense rain, the land's shape, and, well, how we've reshaped that land. And despite all our science, the fact that models still miss 60% of these events, that leads to real consequences: billions in damage and heartbreaking loss of life.
It does. The challenges are real. But, the potential for improvement is also there. Better radar, smarter urban design focusing on working with water and prepared communities together. These could realistically cut the impacts by 20, maybe 30%. But like that 2025 X post said, the one with 18,000 likes, flash floods remind us nature's still in charge. There's a humility we need too.
Absolutely. And that leaves me with a thought for you, our listener, to maybe chew on. With all our incredible technology, our drive to understand and control nature, what do flash floods fundamentally teach us? Maybe about our own limits, our vulnerability, and perhaps the need to adapt with nature rather than always trying to dominate it, especially, as climate change seems to be making these extremes more common. This exploration of flash floods is the kind of thing we love doing here. If it sparked your interest, please do visit mindexpansiondaily.com for more deep dives. And hey, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Join our community trying to understand these big, complex issues. If you found this valuable, maybe consider buying us a coffee. It really helps support what we do, and the link's right there in the description. We genuinely love to hear from you in the comments. You agree with our take on why flash floods are so tricky? Do you have a flood story yourself? Let us know your thoughts and maybe your location. It helps us understand the real-world impact. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to tune in for our next deep dive. We'll be tackling another powerful force of nature:
derechos.